I'm Kara, and welcome to Soul Inspiring Business. I believe that all of us possess unique gifts and talents that allow us to serve the world and our own growth in the highest possible way. Our lives are an expression of our thoughts, beliefs, and actions. And here, we will explore businesses, thought leaders, and topics designed to inspire, helping propel your own growth so you can live your best and most purposeful life. Welcome to Soul Inspiring Business. Welcome back to the Soul Inspiring Business Podcast. I'm your host, Kara Chaffin Donofrio, and we are in week 4 of our Abundance series. And with the intention and inspiration, this whole series is designed to help you lean in to and access more and more levels of abundance. All that you desire, all that you were really born to be. It was really interesting. I was connecting with an old friend the other day. I was telling him a little bit about the podcast and what I'm doing. And he had mentioned, gosh, there's so many people that I know that are at this crossroads that are wondering what they want to do with their life. And I think that that's very common no matter what age you are, to some degree too. Certainly we know about the midlife crisis of your 40s or the crisis in your 20s, trying to figure out what you are, and what you're meant to be doing. But I think we all have these pivotal points, no matter what the age, where we say, gosh, is this it? Is this all that I'm meant for? And if you're conscious enough to be asking that question, then I think the answer is quite clear. And that's that this crossroads, wherever you are, has come for a reason. It's come for a reason to prompt you into the next best thing for your life, to prompt you into asking bigger questions about what's next for me. What do I want to create next? We are all creative beings, creating in every moment. And we were gifted with this buffet of choices, of experiences that we get to choose into. And yes, some of us were born with different levels of prosperity, or we have different levels of hardship, but all of those are meant to refine you into the person that you were really meant to be in this life. I think that's why we're all here. And so sort of like it's really, I think more of life is about stripping away things in some ways. Like if you were to imagine, trying to come up with an analogy on the spot here, but, stripping away, it's really in the stripping away of all the patterns and the behaviors and all the things that we've been taught to get closer and closer to revealing who it is that we really are at our core. And so the more that we can strip at and challenge maybe some of the thinking that we were either came into this lifetime with because of, previous family patterns, or whether it's thought patterns that our parents taught us with maybe good intentions, but wasn't really the truth for us. And so all that we were meant, you may, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you've certainly heard this analogy, but I'll say it again. I look at life as this big university. And when you think about our soul's evolution and the continually learning and expanding and growing part of ourselves, we think of, I go back to thinking about university and classes that I used to sign up for and thinking, wow, wouldn't it be so interesting to learn about that? I wonder what that experience would be like. And then we get into that experience or that class, And we think, gosh, this is way harder than I thought. Why the heck did I ever sign up for this? And I think that that's sometimes life, when we're a soul kind of planning our life's path, we think, wow, wouldn't this be interesting to understand what it would be like to have an alcoholic father, for example. And then you get here and you think, gosh, this isn't any fun. What was I thinking? But if we can look at our experiences in that way, we can look at them as a growth pattern for ourselves. How do we learn how to set boundaries? How do we learn how to love someone that is sick and also care for ourselves? So with that, could you look at that experience and say, oh, that's terrible? Sure. But could you also look at that experience and say, well, if not for that experience, I would not have had the capacity to empathize in this way, right? So there's, with every challenge, an opportunity for learning, for growth and expansion, which is what I believe that we're really intended to do in each lifetime. And we get the ability to choose just how much we want to expand. So I went on a big tangent, but if you followed along, then the whole point again of kind of creating this series, this abundance series, was to help you figure out what it is that you're expanding into next, what it is that, and maybe even look at experiences within your life, how they've unfolded with a new lens. With a lens for compassion for yourself and for those around you, and also for the awareness to be able to say, is this what I still desire? Or do I desire something different? And who can come with me in that journey and who may not? So anyway, so that's the whole intention here. And today, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, which is intuition. I've talked about it many times on this show, but it's something that I think is so important to understand and really grasp for yourself that I'm dedicating another show to it. And I think when we think about intuition, when we think about people that are psychic, so to speak, when I was younger, I always had this understanding that I had to, that other people always knew better than me. And I would always go to other people for guidance, other people for help. And what we have to understand is that there are certain times when that is absolutely the right call, right? It's good to get other people's perspectives as long as we understand that they are also coming at whatever well-intended advice they have for us with and through their own lens and experiences. They can't possibly know exactly what's right for you in exactly the right moment at all times, because they are, by their very nature, somewhat biased by their experiences. And that then comes into what the advice they may give you. So I think learning how to trust your own intuition is just such a powerful tool. And I believe that all of us were born with some level of intuition, some level of knowingness. And then we get patterned by our parents, by our teachers, by all well-intending people. And then we develop our own beliefs based on those experiences. Maybe we begin to think that we don't know, that we have to ask others for help, that other people know better than ourselves. But I think it's important to understand and know that all of us were gifted with some level of innate knowingness. Now, when we think about intuition, I believe that intuition is a learned skill, or I take that back. I believe that all of us are born with some level of intuition. And then just like any skill, it has to be practiced. It has to be part of your day, part of your understanding, part of your awareness that you have it and that you can trust it and lean on it. And just like a skill, just like, if there are people that were born with higher levels of intuition or awareness, just like there are people that are naturally gifted at sports. I mean, my kids are just natural athletes. It's pretty incredible, actually. They were sort of my son was just always was very good with kicking a ball, hitting a ball. His hand-eye coordination is so incredible. It's pretty amazing to watch, and watching from a very young age how that was just him. That was just part of him. And for other people, it could be drawing. And for, we all were gifted with these different levels of gifts, and we come into the world with a different level of that. Same thing as with intuition. There are some people that are highly intuitive and just were born that way. That's just how they were born. But does that mean that if I practice, so, using my son as the example, the athlete that he is, of course, he's younger, and he's only 8 years old, but using that as an example, could another child also learn through practice how to be really good and skillful with the soccer ball, for example? Of course, right? With the right amount of practice, with the right amount of doing, if you're going to go out and juggle the ball for 30 minutes to an hour every day, your body is naturally going to be trained to be more skillful at that skill, right? More skillful at juggling the ball. Same as with intuition. I think the more, and so that's the way to see it when we think about, oh, well, I'm not intuitive, I'm not psychic, I'm not these things. Well, I think that you have some level within you because you were just born that way. That's a given. And then it's how much are you going to lean into that skill? How much are you going to allow yourself to practice trusting the guidance you receive? And that is where I think there's great access available to you in each moment. It's just a matter of learning how to trust the guidance you receive, knowing what it feels like. And we're not taught how to use our intuition. We're just often not. It's not something that's talked about. It's not a skill that we often talk about. It's not mainstream, so to speak. So if you think about intuition as a muscle, it needs to be worked. It needs to be trained. And then the more that you do work with that, the more that you lean into asking the questions, receiving the answers, and then trusting what you're receiving, the more that's opened up to you. That's really what I've come to understand personally from my own practice and how things have evolved for me, but in also talking to other people who are highly psychic or who have higher levels of intuition. All of them have said that they didn't start necessarily for where they are now. So just like a muscle, intuition is that. It is something we're born with, but something that we have the ability to hone and to receive more access to as we learn how to use it and what it feels like. So that's what I thought I'd spend a little bit of time on in helping you with your own intuition, helping you feel into what that could look like for you as you open yourself to these different levels of awareness and intuition that's around you all the time. And a lot of times I'll call it intuitive guidance, because it is really a guidance system. Our body, our energetic beings, all around us are constantly on alert to help us with the things that we want and desire. So when we have going back to the very start, we talked about grounding, we talked about opening to different levels of intuition and awareness, and then also grounding into the present moment and the space that you're in right now and learning how to ask for guidance, right? And then we also talked about clarity and refining your vision. And we talked about what does that look like? How could you ask the questions that are going to help you lean into refining that vision for you? We also we talked about the idea of positive expectation, about how things are in the works already. Often when you ask for things, it's just because you don't see something happening right now doesn't mean it's not happening. Just because you've asked for a desire or are leaning into a new direction doesn't mean that things aren't unfolding for you. There's often things happening beneath the surface and all around you to conspire for the things that you want to manifest and to come into your life. And I think intuition is an important piece of that. Because when we think about, well, what does intuition feel like? I can tell you just from personal experience some ways that I've used it for myself. So there's easy things like, is this a yes or a no for me, right? And that could be, does this decision feel like a yes or a no? And sometimes I'll play with it and I'll say, okay, in my right hand is the yes, my left hand is the no. And when faced with a decision, I'll ask, is it a yes or a no? And I'll ask for this to come through my hand. So I hope you're following along and this isn't too woo, but I do think it's really important, especially as we lean into creation, especially as entrepreneurs and business owners, learning how to do business and life in a way that is in flow is just going to save you a lot of trouble. It's going to save a lot of headache. And I believe it will help you get to where you want quicker. So doesn't mean you can't still get there a myriad of other ways, but why would you want to go the hard way when you already have access to an infinite amount of possibilities around you, an infinite amount of support that actually are trying to help you get to where you want to go? Why wouldn't you just take the easy route? It's like, I can get to the other side of that big hill, right? But I can do it an easy way and a hard way. I can get to the top of the hill. I can take the really hard way, or I can just take the stairs, right? So it's a matter of how do you want to get there? And could it be possible that there's a way to get to the same desired outcome that feels more joyful, that feels more fun, that feels more aligned and peaceful and causes less stress? So if I'm going to choose a path and I know I'm going to get there, do you want to do it in a way that feels really hard, where you're hustling hard and you're not spending time with your family and it's stressful and you're not sleeping well because you're so stressed out, right? Do you want to do it that way? Or do you want to get to the same outcome? And do you want to do it in a way that's just easy, where things can actually just naturally come to you that you want and you get to the same place? That's really the choice that you get to decide. And I think when you understand that intuition plays a big role in that, when you understand that if you have a desired outcome, once you've refined your vision, you've become clear on what it is that you want, and you've asked for what you want and you're moving into an inspired action, really the intuition is what's helping you create and take the inspired action. That's where, when you plan out your week or your day the night before and you ask, well, what are the things that are going to move me closer into this direction? And then you get guidance on what that might be. And when I say guidance, that could be just an idea. Something comes to you like, oh, wouldn't this be really cool to create? Is that something is that creative idea intuition? Sure. Yeah. That is guidance coming to you. Wouldn't it be really cool to create this workshop where I could do XYZ? That's guidance. And sometimes you may get the idea, but the timing of it, that's where also, I guess, again, intuition plays into every decision. Does it feel like this workshop is a now thing or a later thing? In one hand, have the now thing, in one hand, have the later thing. And I'm giving you a tool to feel into intuition, but feel which hand feels like the right hand, right? So if you're asking a question and you say, which is a yes, which is a no, listen for the quick, immediate answer, the one that comes to you easily, the one you don't have to think about, the one that you're not waiting for. And if you're not really sure, then ask for another sign. If you're not really sure, okay, I still am not sure what I'm getting. What's the right answer? Is it yes or no, right? Can I get some further clarity on what that looks like, on what that is, right? So you're refining and you're asking into the questions of, again, what feels aligned? What are the things that are going to get you to that goal? You're then have to, at some point, there's this element of postponement that sometimes takes hold. And that's that, well, what if I make the wrong decision? What if this? What if that? What if that? What if that? Well, let it go and just do it, right? And do what you're guided to do. Do what you get a yes on. And if you can't decide, then just do something and make the decision and then evaluate afterwards, right? But I think the idea is that we are constantly guided, and that thing, those ideas, those, is this a yes or a no? A no? Is this a now thing or a later thing? Is there something more that I need to know? Those are all the questions that once you learn and know that there is a higher part of yourself that you have access to in each moment that is there to guide you, that is there where if you've said, I want to take the more peaceful route, here's where I want to go, and I want to do it in a way where I have space in my day. I want to create a team where I have the right people around and aligned with me, and they're independent, and they're smart, and they're determined, and they align to the things that I align to. And here's the values that I really value. And the people that I attract into my world always just seem to have this value system too. And I always know the right thing to do at the right time. And so as you're continually training into this, and not even training into, but as you begin to strip away the conditioning and align more and more into all that you desire and want, and as experiences happen that cause you to know what you do want and what you don't want, that's part of that process too. So the idea is to know, to trust that you do have access to more than you know, to more knowledge. And you may not understand it all. You may not understand why you may think, oh my gosh, this is the best thing and I have to do it now. But you get a no. Maybe you ask and you get a no. And you're not quite sure why. Evaluate that. Is the no just a fear? Is it a fear of not being able to move forward? Or is the no actually meant to, because there's better timing involved? Because actually the idea is exactly what you need to be doing, but it's just not a now thing because there's more things that you have to learn to be able to incorporate into that bigger workshop, bigger idea that has been planted. So these are all big things, and this is not something that is so easy to teach in some ways because it's so individual. It is a journey, and it's intended to be a journey for you to unfold and get to experience and know what these things feel like for you. I can tell you how I do it. And again, a lot of it is a sorting. I use a lot of sorting questions to help me figure out the right path. I also use a lot of journaling. So for me personally, a lot of times I'll get into a meditative space and I'll journal the answers. Some would call it channeling. And I'll ask a question at the top of the page of my journal. And then I'll just ask for what it is I'm meant to receive. And then I'll just start writing. And sometimes the writing may make sense. Sometimes it may not. Sometimes you have to, there's a book called The Artist's Way. Was it Julia Cameron? I may butcher that, but it's basically this, she called it The Artist's Way, and you journal. It's about 5 pages a day. And she talks about how in the beginning, it's getting out the monkey mind, all the things that, are stuck in your head. And then once you strip out that, you start to get into more of the juice, the real, artists, the creativity and all of that. But it's one way of doing things. And again, for me personally, having grown up to some degree with that practice, that's helpful for me. But and could potentially be helpful for you too. So again, writing a question at the top of the page and just allowing whatever comes through. May or may not make sense to you. But that's another way that I personally have learned how to get guidance and understanding around certain situations and certain things that are going on. But you have to feel into what feels like that for you. And where do you find yourself more creative and more intuitive? Another place, and I've talked about this before as well on the show, but another place is in nature. I think that that's, just for me, being by the ocean, being in the trees, being around other living, breathing things, God things from the earth is a way to really get in tune with our higher levels of self. And again, access sort of a universal knowledge around us in all times. So play with that, see what that looks like for you. I'm curious how that might evolve. And again, as you play with this idea of positive expectation, of expecting things to align for you, it is staying aware, staying alert in each moment as to where you're being guided next and what are the right actions, and learning really how to use that muscle. It's, again, the more you use a muscle, the stronger it gets. And the same is true for intuition. The more that you learn how to use and to trust the intuition that is strongly within you and every one of us, the more available it will be to you, just like any muscle. And the last thing that I'll talk about, and this is actually something that so my kids' soccer coach, he was talking to the kids and he was doing this pep talk before their game, and it was actually a really cute pep talk. And I really loved the analogy. And he said, do you know what it means to be a light switch in a game? And they were thinking, and they came up with different answers. And what he was really trying to teach them, and I think this is really an important lesson for all of us, is how can we be a light switch to events? What that means is when something happens that is tough or we can't control, or we're faced with something, becoming a light switch is about moving through it, turning it off, and then turning it right back on, right? We're going to know that whatever happened, we're going to forget about it. We're going to turn it off, just like a light switch, right? And we're going to move on to the next. Because in life, we could face things that are tough. That's just part of life. But when we can control the controllables, but there are uncontrollable things that happen. And sometimes we make a bad decision. And versus dwelling on it, versus he was describing it as a dimmer, versus dimming it where it's still there, but it's just dimmed, you just turn it off. That happened, wasn't the best decision. I am going to turn it off and I'm going to turn it back on and move on to the next. And I liked that analogy because, of course, we can always learn from every experience that happens. But you know what? Don't dwell on it. Be present for the people, for the situations, for everything around you. Don't just dim the bad experiences and still have them in your space. No, turn them off. Move on to the next. Learn from it and move on to the next. And be guided in each moment as you do. If maybe when you're playing with this and you're learning how to use your own intuition, if you get a no on something, but you do it anyway, and it doesn't turn out quite right, because maybe you knew all along you weren't meant to do that thing, turn off the light switch, on to the next, right? Learn from it and learn from that and say, oh, wow, I did know intuitively that wasn't the best decision, but I did it anyway. And that's okay. But now I have a better understanding for what the yes and the no feel like for me. And so next time when I get the no, I'm going to trust that. Or next time when I get the yes, even though I'm kind of scared and I don't really know why, and it seems like a weird move, I'm going to go for it because I got the yes. I'm going to learn how to trust as I go. So with all that being said, I hope this was helpful. There were a lot of tangents that this episode took, but I hope you followed along. And the whole intention in creation, again, is to help you really move into all that is intended for you, for all that's waiting for you, and all that you are choosing into consciously creating right now. And wherever you are, whatever's happened before doesn't have to be what happens moving forward, because you were gifted with choice and you have a choice in every moment as to what will evolve for you next. You get to be part of that process, and you're part of that process through the conscious decisions that you make in every moment, through the conscious thought of what you're creating into being. So you're more powerful than you know. And my wish and hope and intention for you is that you take all of that in and then are consciously choosing into all that you are intended for next. Sending you so much love and looking forward to next time. Loved being here with you today and would love to connect with you more over on Instagram. My handle is linked to the show notes, or you can just type in @Kara Chaffin Donofrio. And I have something special for you as a free gift, my Dynamic Life Journal. This special book has the power to really help you live a soul-inspired life. Go to freegiftfromkara.com. Easy to remember, freegiftfromkara.com. Until next time, beautiful people, sending all my love.